I just realized I have a wireless mouse, so I don't have to run from my monitor whenever I press start recording. So I guess we're live. I initially planned for the first episode to be out about 2 weeks before now, but finding a podcast partner proved more difficult than I thought it would be. If anybody that's listening to this would like to be on at least one episode, find a way to get in touch with me. I'd love to have you on the show. As of now, I don't have a permanent partner. So this episode is just league news, which is, it's not a complete full episode. I only have a couple bullet points to go over. It's kind of like a mini episode, and I plan on doing this definitely more frequently than normal episodes, mostly just when notable things happen in the NBA or even NFL, which is something I want to talk about. I've promoted this podcast mostly as a basketball podcast, but really it's more all sports. It's probably going to focus mainly on basketball just because that's what I know the most about. That's what I'm most fluent in, and that's my favorite sport. But I could definitely and will definitely be talking about football pretty often, especially with the season just about to start, and maybe a little bit of baseball. I've been watching baseball this season, really enjoying it, so if some big things happen in baseball, could be talking about it on here. But yeah, it's not just strictly basketball, so if you were turned off by the basketball part of this, I'll make sure to let you know that it's not just a one sport thing primarily. So welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Rebound. This isn't my first podcast I've done. This is actually, how many have I done? Individual podcast wise, I think this is number 3. In terms of podcasts still available to listen to, this is the only one still available. The other 2 that I've done are kind of wiped off the face of the earth. I still have them, my phone files or whatever, but they're not public, to my knowledge. Last podcast I did was with Jameson. We had a kind of like a talking comedy kind of podcast thing that we did about once a week, but we stopped after 2 episodes. And then the podcast before that was with another one of my friends, and that was at the end of 8th grade. So it's been a good year or 2 since that one, and it's been a couple of months, probably 3 or 4 months since I've done a podcast. So I wanted to get back into it, and I'd been watching some other basketball podcasts, getting some ideas, because I thought it was something I'd like to do. I already like, chatting about the NBA, so I figured, this would be a pretty fun thing to do whenever I feel like it. Obviously, that doesn't mean I'm gonna, post once a month or sporadically whenever I feel like making one. I'm gonna try to keep it on a, good schedule. I don't want to drop an episode every 2 days and then you kind of get sick of it because there's so much stuff. But I don't want to leave you hanging for months at a time. I'd say at least once every 2 weeks, hopefully, and potentially more than that. But I think I'm going to strive for that. I have trouble kind of sticking to one thing, but I'm going to try, and hopefully it works. So, I'd already been worried about not being able to find a partner, but I figured go ahead and doing a league news episode whenever things have already happened, just to kind of get in the flow of doing it and have that kind of accountability to make the podcast, would kind of help me get jump started. So here we are. We're at league news, August 25th. I don't remember if this happened yesterday or today. I kind of got those days mushed up. I'll look that up for you real quick, but yeah, there's been some pretty big stuff happening in the league recently, and I'm going to save the more giant overall off-season things for the first episode of the podcast. But for now, I'm going to go over the little stuff that's happened recently. Okay, and I just checked. So the Patrick Beverley trade did happen today. And I believe the Chet Holmgren news was also, let me double check, was also today. Yes, okay, so we're good, sorry. We're good to talk about this today, August 25th. League news, here we go. I've got 2 or 3 bullet points, and all the bigger stuff will be saved for the episode 1 that we drop later. So yeah, here we go. I've already given you the intro. You should know what this is by now. Basketball podcast. And this specific episode is a part of a kind of mini-series that I'm going to try to do at least once a week with little updates about the league. And so today we've got, like I said, 2 or 3 things to go over pretty quickly. Shouldn't take longer than, 6 or 7 minutes. Don't quote me on that. It could be shorter, it could be longer. I'm going to start off by getting the big one out of the way that you probably heard. And that was that Kevin Durant agreed to move forward with the Nets after a meeting with head coach Steve Nash and the governors of the team, which is another word for general manager. Quote, "We have agreed to move forward with our partnership. We are focusing on basketball with one collective goal in mind. Build a lasting franchise to bring a championship to Brooklyn," end quote. The day of this, I believe, the day that they announced this, it was later in the day, because earlier in the morning, I saw a tweet about how Memphis was inquiring with the Nets about a potential Kevin Durant trade. And, of course, my first instinct was, good Lord, please don't do this, because I'm not a fan of Kevin Durant. I didn't like him when he was on the Warriors. I don't care for him now that he's on the Nets. I don't care for the Nets as a whole. I do like Kyrie, but I don't care for Kevin Durant, and pretty much any team he's on kind of brings him down a little bit for me. I still love and watch the Warriors when he was on there, but he wasn't my favorite player, and I don't really respect him as much as I do the other players on that team, but that's besides the point. So what I meant to say was, whenever I saw that they were inquiring about getting Kevin Durant, my first instinct was, what if they try to trade away key pieces of our young core, like Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson, those type players, because obviously they're not going to give away Ja. Ja's untouchable, I believe. At least in my eyes he is. I can't confirm that he's, actually untouchable in the league, but I would assume that he is, because he's who they want to build the franchise around. And, he's said multiple times that he intends on staying in Memphis. We're not sure for how long, but hopefully his whole career. I love Ja. But I was thinking, what if they give away players that I really like, and then I think are the whole reason that we got how far we did in the playoffs and how high of a seed we did, making it to the second round, playing the Warriors. It was a really fun series, and I think that this coming year, I don't really think that Memphis is a finals contender per se, but we definitely are a playoff lock, and I would give us a second round lock. I don't think we're going to be one of those first round exits again for a couple years if we keep developing our young core like we are. And so when I saw that Kevin Durant could potentially be traded there, like I said, I kind of thought that this could mess it all up. Memphis could be set back, because adding a big star like that to a relatively small, quotes, team, it's a whole different kind of environment when you have a superstar like Kevin Durant that can be the best player on a championship team in a smaller organization like the Memphis Grizzlies. The Nets were already kind of a smaller organization, but they're kind of used to superstars like Dr. J and Jason Kidd, but they've got they had 3 of them at one time, so they got kind of used to it, and they're kind of thrown in all the superstar mix, and it kind of messed them up. That's why Kevin Durant isn't very happy with the GMs and Steve Nash. But I was really worried about what that fit would be with him in Memphis, and how he would kind of how he would affect the team's core, how it was currently built and how it could be built after that. Because potentially if he doesn't get a ring with Memphis, he leaves, we lose those players that we traded, and we have to reset with Ja. Ja could be unhappy and Ja could leave, and we could have to, restart again like we already did. And I think we're in a good spot right now. I don't think we need Kevin Durant, because if we got Kevin Durant, I don't think we're even still a finals contender. I think we would be better than we are now. But again, the shift that you have to make from, young core led by Ja, Jaren, Bane as support, to Ja, Kevin Durant, and who else. But what made me a little bit better, what made me feel better, was that I kept reading that article, and it said that they refuse to include Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane in a potential trade offer. So I was like, okay, that's pretty good, because I like that trio. I don't want any of them to leave. But then I thought, who are they going to try to get Kevin Durant with? Like, who do we have? Brandon Clark, Kyle Anderson. Who would Brooklyn want? Because if Kevin leaves, they have Kyrie, Ben Simmons, and then who we trade them. Kyrie, Ben Simmons, Kyrie point guard, Ben Simmons. Let's say Ben is playing the 4 this year, because I think he can play power forward. Let's say Ben's playing the 4. They have a 1, a 4. I couldn't even tell you their center off the top of my head. I really don't know. Really, their whole roster is just the 3 superstars and filler. Because if I can't name them, I don't know. But, let's say we give them Brandon Clark or Kyle Anderson. How do they really fit into that team? Do they come off the bench? Or are they playing new positions? And I don't think that those players really fit into that Brooklyn environment. And I really don't think they would perform as well as they do in Memphis, because I think Memphis is a special case of, like, the culture and the core that we have. And I think everything is kind of like a puzzle, and every one is pieces, and it kind of just fits together nicely, and that's why we were so good last year. I think we have a really good way of coaching young players and, making them better. And I think we've done a great job of that so far. But bringing them over to Brooklyn, they're kind of stuck where they're at now. So I don't think they would bring much to the table. So when I read that, I was just really confused, because honestly, Jaren and Bane were pretty much the only things that, if I was the Nets, I'd be interested in. Obviously besides Ja, but Ja's untouchable. So if you're not offering me those 2 players, then why am I giving you Kevin Durant? I mean, obviously you get, Rudy Gobert went for 5 first-round picks to the Timberwolves, which we'll talk about in a minute, but, I mean, that's 5 first-round picks for Rudy Gobert. Rudy Gobert cannot be the best player on a championship team. He just can't. So if he's getting 5 picks and players for him, what's Kevin Durant getting? Is Kevin Durant getting Kyle Anderson, Brandon Clark, and 6 picks? 7 picks? How many picks do we have? I don't even know. Why would we give up all of our picks for Kevin Durant, who doesn't really have a history of staying in teams that he's not happy with? He doesn't like to work out his problems. He likes to leave whenever he's in a state of, either failure beforehand, leaves, or needs to prove himself and then leaves. So what's he going to do when he comes to Memphis? Is he going to get upset that they didn't win a championship like they did with, like he did with Brooklyn? Or was going to do with Brooklyn? Or is he going to stay until he feels like he needs somewhere that will fit him better? Because Memphis is not that place. Memphis is not the fit for Kevin Durant. So I don't think he's going to stay for that 4-year contract. So honestly, Kevin going to Memphis was never really going to happen in my eyes. It just kind of worried me, because anytime you see a potential trade offer like that, you have to think, is this in the best interest of my team? and how will this affect them in the future. But luckily, as I said, they agreed on him staying in Brooklyn. I don't remember how long it is, but I think they're going to continue with the rest of his contract. And, back like a week or two ago, they said something about an ultimatum where he wanted to fire the head coach and one of the general managers, I think, because he believed they were incompetent and he just didn't want to be with them. And honestly, I don't blame him for saying that about Steve Nash. Brooklyn's not going anywhere with Steve Nash, but, Kevin's that player where he has the power in an organization to kind of make some of the decisions, because without Kevin, what are they? Like I said, they're Kyrie and Ben. You can't even count on Ben to play this season or to play ever. We don't know what kind of a player Ben Simmons is because we've only seen him for, a handful of seasons. Just dropped last season because he didn't want to play. He wanted to get out of that organization, and he did. Who knows if he wants to stay in Brooklyn? He could force a trade out of here. So if Kevin leaves, what do they have? Kyrie? What else? But yeah, I don't foresee Kevin moving because honestly they just can't afford him. They can't afford losing him, so if I were them, I would do whatever it takes to keep him on my team. That's pretty much all I have to say about that matter. I think you get the point, and I'll go more in depth about the whole Kevin Durant situation in our larger episode, which I still don't know when that's going to come out. But yeah, that's what I've got for now, and we'll go ahead and move on to the second point, which happened just this morning. I read the news early in the morning, just when I got to school, and I was pretty shocked because recently Rudy Gobert was traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for Patrick Beverley, like 5 first-round picks, and some other players, so I can't remember. But yeah, Pat Bev is, or was, a member of the Utah Jazz. I think that was for about 2 or 3 weeks, maybe longer. I don't know. My sense of time is pretty bad, but I was like, okay, Pat Bev's going to be on the Jazz this year. That's going to be interesting. I'll watch a couple Jazz games, see how that goes. But, they're a tank team. They're not going to try to win anything. They tried to get rid of Donovan Mitchell, which we'll talk about in the bigger episode. So far, they failed at that. They haven't found anybody to take Donovan. So they got Donovan, had Pat Bev. But this morning, I read that Patrick Beverley has been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers for Talen Horton-Tucker and Stanley Johnson. If I'm the Lakers in this situation, right, I have the opportunity to get a pretty good player, solid point guard from the Utah Jazz in exchange for 2 of my players that I don't really need. So I'm thinking, okay, can I pick up Pat Bev, who's definitely going to be better than Russell Westbrook was last season, and we'll talk about Russell's fit in Los Angeles in the bigger episode. And I'm saying that a lot. Bigger episode's going to be big. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, but getting Pat Bev for Los Angeles, it's a pretty big move. They've got a pretty solid point guard position now. I was kind of worried about what was going to happen with Russell because either he starts next season and hopefully he's better, or he's benched behind another point guard that they either acquire or have to trade for, or acquire or just have on their roster somewhere, or he's going to get traded. Russell fired his general manager. All this drama because he didn't want to be, a part of those lower tier trades because of his ego or something. But, I was thinking, okay, well, we're a pretty good ways through the offseason. Russell's still in LA. What are they going to do? Get Pat Bev, apparently. So they've got Pat Bev now. I think Pat Bev is going to be an interesting fit in Los Angeles. Of course, Patrick Beverley doesn't like Russell Westbrook. So I don't know how that situation is going to go down. But it's interesting to think about Pat Bev with Anthony Davis or LeBron. 3 bigger players. Pat Bev can kind of stretch the floor a little bit. LeBron can, LeBron's LeBron. It's cool to think about how Patrick Beverley will fit in with that team. If Anthony Davis is healthy this season and he plays, I think he's going to be great. Do I think that the Lakers are a championship contender, even with this Patrick Beverley trade? No. Do I think they're a playoff lock? No. Do I think they are a play-in lock? Yes. I definitely think that they're not going to have another, complete playoff miss season. I think there's going to be at least a play-in series. Whether they win or lose, I'm not sure. But I think that there's definitely potential that they could make it in the playoffs, especially if Anthony Davis comes back. A lot of people, especially that I talk to, say that, Lakers had a fluke year this year, and they're going to come back and be finals contenders. But I don't think they really understand that run, that championship run that Bron and AD had was, it was in the bubble, and it doesn't necessarily translate to normal NBA. And the circumstances that they had then, with how many players was it that was injured? I mean, there were plenty. That run was kind of handed to them. I'm not going to say they didn't earn it. Of course, getting a championship is hard under any circumstances, but we're in the normal NBA now. Teams are better than they were. What are the Lakers going to do to compete with those other West teams? Or East teams, sorry, no. West teams. I don't know what I'm saying. What are they going to compete with the other West teams? Look at Los Angeles Clippers. Clippers have arguably the deepest roster in the entire NBA right now. Even their point guard, small forward, power forward, you've got John Wall, you've got Kawhi Leonard, and you've got Paul George. Three of arguably some of the biggest names in NBA history. I don't know about John Wall, but Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, John Wall, all the other people on that roster fill out really well, and the Lakers can't compete with that, even with a healthy Anthony Davis. So I just don't think that they can even get past the second round. LeBron makes any team he's better. LeBron makes any team he's on better, and he's got that X factor where he could potentially make something big happen. Anthony Davis got stuff like that, but I don't think Pat Bev is that piece they needed to get further into the playoffs. I think they're good for play-in now, but I don't think they're going to get far in the playoffs or even past the first round. I think they're definitely play-in, and if they make the play-in, they are not past the first round. But that's just my prediction. But overall, I think it's a good trade. I think it's a net positive. Pat Bev is going to be a very interesting fit, like I said, in Los Angeles, and I'm excited to see what happens. I think it's going to be pretty crazy, and I'm definitely looking forward to this next season, which is something that Chet Holmgren can't say, which leads us into our next point. I think it was also today that I read that Chet Holmgren is out for potentially the entire 22-23 season with a foot injury from a Pro-Am game. And a lot of people in the NBA community have been making jokes about how Chet Holmgren's skinny. If he tries to guard LeBron, he's going to get folded. Rolling like a tumbleweed across the floor because he doesn't have any, he's not big-bodied. He can't make his way into the paint. What we saw in Summer League was incredible. I'll give him that. He was really good. 6 blocks, however many points he had that game, teaming up with Josh Giddey. Pretty good performances. But does it translate to the NBA? I mean, Summer League is kind of a bubble in and of itself just because it's, Summer League players, less tension, less people in the stands, It's not the NBA. It's closer, but I'd say college is on the level of NBA that Summer League is. So, Chet performed very well in college, performed pretty well in Summer League, so does that translate to the NBA? Well, apparently this season we're not going to find out, because in a Pro-Am game he's injured. I don't know the details exactly, but apparently he injured his foot. I don't know which foot it is, but he's got the whole 22-23 season to get in NBA shape, get his game ready, get that practice in, potentially come back for the 23-24 season a better player, or potentially, come back at the end of the 22-23 season. Thunder, another tank team, they're not going to try to go for a playoff run this year, maybe play in, but they want to get that high pick again. They've shown that they can do a pretty good job of getting picks. They've got Shea, they've got Josh Giddey, they've got Chad Holmgren. Who else are they going to get, the next coming seasons? And how many years are they going to be tanking to get picks before they're like, okay, let's try to go for it like Memphis did? Because Memphis is ready. Memphis is ready to go for a run. Like I said, they're not necessarily a finals contender or a deep playoff run contender, but they're going for it. They're all in. They're trying to make their team better, and they think that, and I think that pretty soon they're going to be a top team in the NBA. The Thunder are not in that position. They have the talent to potentially be in the situation that Memphis is in, and I think in a couple of years, maybe 2 to 3, if they quit tanking after this year, they could make their way into Memphis's spot, because I think in 2 to 3 years Memphis is going to be better than they are right now. So I think they're going to kind of fill in that shoe of the rising young stars, good young core, and if they can teach coach their young players as well as Memphis does, then they're definitely going to have a second round team. But with Chet out potentially this whole season, he's pretty much written out of the conversation for Rookie of the Year. And this was going to be one of the things I was looking forward to this season, talking with my friends about who we thought the Rookie of the Year was going to be, because we followed this draft pretty well. And I was excited for it. Paolo number 1, Jabari number 2, Chet number 3, I believe. But Chet's out. So now we've got Paolo and Jabari, who are my top 2 to get Rookie of the Year. And so, our third option's out. My pick still stands as Paolo, but now he has even less to compete against, which on one hand, it's like, okay, you have less competition, so is it easier to win? But on the other hand, you could potentially be losing out a person to compare your stats to. You know what I mean? Because if Chet was bad this year and Jabari was pretty good and Paolo was great, people would look to Chet more because he's, third overall. That's only 2 picks behind, and he was not very good this season. Jabari's pretty good, but look at Paolo. He's great. Compared to the other rookies, there's no competition. But Chet's out of the conversation. You've got Jabari, who plays, let's say Jabari plays great, Paolo plays great. Who wins? If Chet's in there, Chet plays great, then you've got a 3-way competition for who is Rookie of the Year, but one of them's got to slip behind the other 2, right? If Chet's out of the question, Paolo pretty much has one guy to compete against. It's usually top 3, top 4 players that are in competition for Rookie of the Year. Most of the years, I can say that pretty confidently. But, who is he going to be compared against? Paolo. But, you've got Jabari, who he can be, I guess. But if Jabari plays just as well as Paolo, it's kind of up to who the voters like more. But if you have enough people to compare him against, then it's kind of easier to choose him as Rookie of the Year. But, that's just my thought. It's kind of conflicted. There's kind of a lot of ideas floating around in my head. What I'm trying to say is that Chet getting out could potentially make it a lot easier for Paolo to win, or potentially make it a lot harder because there's not enough people for him to compare his stats against. But, it goes either way. We'll just have to see what happens this season. Could be crazy. Do I think that Paolo's going to win? Yes. Do I think that Jabari is going to be good competition? Absolutely. I think Jabari is going to go off this year with Jalen Green. But Paolo, who does Paolo have that can take away from him on his own team? Markelle Fultz? France? Nobody's going to steal his thunder. Paolo is the number one option. Who's the number one option in Houston? Is it Jalen Green or is it Jabari Smith Jr.? I think it's Jalen Green, but it very well could be Jabari. We'll just have to see how this season goes. Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. If you guys kind of like this format, the league news thing, of course you haven't seen what it's like in a full episode, so you don't have your opinion on that yet, but kind of shorter episodes, less information overall, but kind of more in-depth on each different topic. I enjoy doing this. Definitely want to do it again. Definitely going to do it more often. Whenever something big happens in the league again, I'll be right back on here recording another episode to release to you guys. Make sure to check us out on YouTube if you're not already listening to this on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, link to Spotify is in the bio. You can listen to it on your phone, on your computer, on your laptop, on anything. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. Check out our Twitter, at Rebound Pod, for all the updates, thumbnail reveals, any kind of news that you need to know about the podcast, when our next episode's coming out, who's going to be the special guest, what we're going to be talking about. Everything is going to be posted on there. Hope you guys enjoyed. I definitely enjoyed doing it. Definitely going to be doing it again. And yeah, that's all I have to say. So, thank you for listening. Peace.